When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
In Walmart Nouvelle, time was ticking away. Only a few nights left till the big holiday. But last-minute gifters had no need to worry. Walmart Express Delivery got their gifts in a hurry. From Nintendo to Nespresso and Lego flowers, they could check off their lists in as fast as an hour. All of Nouvelle, East, West, South, and North could order gifts up until 5 p.m. on December 24th. So this holiday, just do as the Who's do. With gift delivery this fast, they all gasped. From Walmart, who knew? Subject to availability, terms and fees apply.
Hello everyone, Chris here. Just a quick reminder that this episode of How We're the Podcast is sponsored by LifeScore Bet, a proud principal partner of Sunderland AFC. And if you're looking to get started, they've got a cracking welcome offer for new customers. Bet £10 on sports and get £30 in free bets. Simple as that. So if you're ready to join the action, make sure you're doing it with LifeScore Bet, the home of total betting. New members only. Bet more than £10 on sports within 14 days. Free bets valid 7 days. £20 to use on Sportsbook. £10 on Bet Builder. Terms and conditions and deposit exclusions apply. Please bet responsibly and remember, over 18s only. And now, cue the music. Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast, sponsored by LifeScore Bet. And after the beauty and chaos of the lads reacting to last week's event, this week we're going to be talking about a goalless draw on the South Coast as Sunderland draw 0-0 at Brighton and Hove Albion. A solid away performance puts another point on the board, which puts the lads up to 5th in the table before the late Saturday fixtures. And it was a game that both sides will feel a little frustrated in that it could have been potentially all 3 points for either side. But we'll squeeze as much out of a 0-0 as possible because luckily for you, there are more interesting voices than mine to go over it all. So I'm very pleased to say we have Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Chris. Your voice is plenty interesting. Don't worry about that.
I know my place, mate. I know my place. Don't worry about that.
I miss the memo. I thought every post-match pod now you had to be absolutely steaming drunk. I've just knocked back 10 pints there to try and recreate last week's magic.
I mean, your voice is very calm, by the way, for having 10 pints. I mean, if this is you after 10 pints, I mean, basically it's exactly the same. I mean, and actually, but the thing is now, I can imagine that. You know, I can imagine that you don't actually change after 10 pints.
No, but then I'll stand up and just keel over, you know.
That's as crazy as it gets, Andrew. But also to join me and Andrew talk over another, a classic 0-0 draw, really. Actually, but to be fair, really interesting, and we'll get into it because we also have Jonny Hawley with us. Hello, Jonny.
Hello, Chris. Yes, I'm back, ready to react to another match, but this time I've decided not to have the 10 pints and change that also happened before the reaction pod last weekend. So yes, I'm ready, and I feel like this time I actually do remember all 90 minutes of the game. So that should also help with being able to analyse it a bit.
Well, that's it. It was chaos, but that's it. I mean, you couldn't have had a bigger contrast, I don't think. I mean, I'm slightly kind of disappointed for you that you've just got me and Andrew kind of sitting there and all calm and collected after a goalless draw, mate.
Well, it's not quite the drama of of running into the Hilton Beer Garden and seeing all 5 lads sat round the phone beginning the pod and having to. I think Gav said that I came in at the back post. That is very much how it felt. Literally just watching them begin the podcast, like no, all running in slow motion and that. So yeah, a bit calmer this time round.
Well, and then came in and shouted over everyone else, just like everyone else was doing. But,
Yeah. Hey, I gave as good as I got, if nothing else. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. Well, look, let's get into the goalless draw at Brighton and let's go into the team. And I'll start with you, Andrew, because we talked about this on the preview. And it's funny because I had in my mind I was almost looking forward to seeing what the team would be in terms of what's he going to do, because we talked about it on the preview. I thought it was really interesting. Us talking about it, the amount of options that he had. And I think people have had in their minds thinking, well, AFCON's going to mean half the team changes and all this sort of stuff. And it was 3 changes in the end.
Yeah, he kept the changes to a minimum. And if we're honest, that probably isn't a shock, because he'll only change where he thinks he has to. He doesn't just change for change's sake. But yeah, you're right. We've been talking about AFCON for months. AFCON this, AFCON that. Sunderland are going to be a completely different club. Well, it still seemed like the same team pretty much to me. It wasn't like we're watching a different side or anything. He might make further tweaks as we go along in the next few games, but it probably was the least surprising 11 he could have gone for, I would have said.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, Johnny. But again, just 3 changes, but he seemed to, and everyone was still second guessing because with Gertruda in there, everyone was still going, well, is it 4 or is it 5 at the back? And then with Chris Rigg in there, it was, well, is Chris Rigg going to be out wide? Is he going to be in the middle? Is Lafayette going to be on the left or Adingra on the right? So it had loads of, even though he named that 11, you could have still named, you could have put them into 2 or 3 different setups, couldn't you?
You absolutely could. And I think to be honest, I think that's the case with our starting 11s on most occasions this season anyway. There's always a level of flexibility and fluidity in the players that are selected who, somebody like Gertrude is a perfect example. I mean, you've mentioned him there. He can just as easily play, 3 different positions at least. He can play midfield, he can play centre-back, he can play full-back. And there's players like that right through the squad. So in some senses, it wasn't that big of a departure or a change from the norm. But I think where I was really interested to see it was, like you say, was it going to be a 4 or a 5? And in a move that pleased me very much, the lineup graphic before the game listed Gertrude with the midfielders, and that's where he ended up lining up. So brownie points for the Sunderland admin there. But yeah, that was the big one for me, because there were enough options across the pitch that I think you could have named an 11 in either formation. But then, like you say, there's little sub stories within that of Lafayette, of Adingra, of other names. So yeah, it was really interesting to see the team come out. And I'm sure we'll get onto the substitutions, when we're talking about the actual match. But where it really did feel like a different team was when you looked at the bench and you see the difference in the names and the options that we have available. Obviously, that's something that it's unavoidable as a problem when you've got 5 players for today and then 6 with Diarra going. You're going to have not so much substandard options on the bench, but just different players who haven't been involved as much, have maybe been injured. I mean, Serkin was on the bench. Mundell, obviously, who came on, who's, we all know he was out for a long time, and the same last season. So, yeah, you lose a bit of sharpness, you lose a few options, but I think by and large, like you say, it wasn't the ripping the team up and starting again that maybe external voices might have seen coming because they just look at the lists and say, 7 players or 6 players going to AFCON for Sunderland. Well, they must be totally, up a creek without a paddle. I think we all knew internally that wasn't going to be the case, but yeah, definitely intriguing, and I think it's a sign that Labrise is quite confident in his players, that he did line up with a 4. And again, we'll get on to all this. But yeah, that was my main sort of takeaway from that.
Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to actually mention about you, because I was thinking about as you were talking there, Johnny. But first of all, Newcastle not playing in black and white last week. I wanted to mention that to you because I'm sure you were fuming over that. And then the other day, Johnny, and this is for everyone who's listened back to our Route 101, by the way, Andrew was naming his team the other day for the preview, and he did it in squad number order. Honestly,
Oh, well, give the full context. It was because I couldn't work out what formation to go with. You pushed us right under a bus there, Chris, man.
Look, Johnny's disgusted. Anyway, just very quickly, Johnny, did anything surprise you in that starting 11?
I was surprised to see Rig start if he wasn't going to be midfield. I thought if we were going to go with Adingra and another out wide, out of that list of players, I would have expected it to be Lafay on one side and Adingra on the other, with Rig tucking in more centrally. But I can still see the logic behind it, particularly with Rig not having played much football over the past, month and a half or so. It makes sense to maybe keep him out of that heated engine room. But yeah, that was that was a surprise, particularly once we actually saw the players come out and assume the positions. Seeing Rig on the right, I was a bit, didn't necessarily see that coming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew, getting into the game, look, Brighton had a chance basically first couple of minutes off a corner header about 6 yards out, good save from Roofs. But then after that, I just thought we almost took charge of the game, and I thought, when you looked at us out of possession, it looked 4-4-2. It looked really positive. Our press, I thought, were fantastic. And we talked a bit about at the manager's press conference during the week, and he said it's really interesting to come up against teams like Brighton, where you have to try and come up with a game plan. I tell you what, that first half, how we pressed them in, Brighton didn't have a clue how to play out in that first half.
No, I'd agree with that. We looked really in control. Yes, there was that early header and Roofs has made a good save, but it wasn't a worldie. It was a routine save a keeper of his level you would be expected to make. But yeah, other than that, I don't recall Brighton being able to lay a glove on us. We were set up fantastically. We really seemed at it, which hasn't always been the case on the back of a derby win. There can sometimes be what is it, after the Lord Mayor's show. There was no hint of that. And a few of us were concerned about how do we replace Siddiqui's work rate. Well, there wasn't a single time in that first half where you thought, we're short of energy here. Everybody was bang up for it and doing what they needed to do. So yeah, it was a really encouraging first half. And as we'd said in the preview, Brighton are no mugs. They're a team who are used to finishing in the top half of the table nowadays. So to go away from home and to keep them as quiet as we did is really positive.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny, I was impressed with that first half performance. And you have to almost forget, we're going away to a side, the length of the country. And as Andrew said, there is an element of being careful a week after such a big up, a big positive like it was last week. Everyone was celebrating, and sometimes you have to find your feet again after that. But, we're going away to a side who, 9th season in the Premier League, they finished the top 10, 3 out of the last 4 seasons, something like that. As Andrew said, these are no mugs. And we went there, made 3 changes with players who have been, Reinildo and Siddiqui especially, first 11 players start almost first names on the team sheet. And we go there and boss the game.
I think in some ways having to make those changes possibly helped a little bit with that intensity and motivation maybe at the beginning of the game. Obviously, it's not a good thing when you see players who have the amount of quality and tenacity and everything else that players like Ronaldo and Siddiqui and Talbi and Traore and others as well who've gone. It's not great when you miss those players, but like you say, it can be easy sometimes after such a high as last weekend to struggle to replicate the same intensity, to struggle to get yourself as up for the next game, because it doesn't matter unless it was a Champions League final or a game to win the league. No following game from a away town derby is going to have the same impact. So, I wonder whether maybe just the fact that we had, the AFCON lads have gone, we've had to make the changes, and it's an away game, so we naturally have to be a little bit careful, but also it's an away game that I'm sure everybody internally in the club thought we could win. So I think all of that maybe just helps to sharpen the focus a little bit, and rather than your mind as a player at all being occupied with any sort of thoughts of last week, I'm pretty sure that everybody from Granit Xhaka down was just thinking, right, how do we get these new lads? I'm saying new, but you know what I mean? The lads who've come in,
Yeah,
how do we get them involved early doors? How do we make sure they settle in? We've got to make sure that we keep those relationships across the pitch as similar as we can to how they've been. Even somebody like Trey Hume going to left back, it's not like he's not been playing much football for us, but he's not started many games at left back. So naturally you lose a bit of that chemistry between Ronaldo and the players around him. So yeah, I think possibly that could have been in some ways a bit of a help. Again, as I'm sure we'll come on to later in the game, it maybe turned and started to hurt us a bit. But yeah, I think you're right. We were bang up for it, and I was really, really impressed with the start that we made to the game.
Yeah, no, I thought we were really good. And then it comes into half-time goalless, Andrew, and I'm just looking at my notes. I've got, I'm writing things like very good performance, but didn't create enough. And, I've got, feels like we should have taken advantage. Now, looking at that first half, and I just remember how I felt at half-time, there was almost this feeling of, oh no, almost like we didn't take advantage of it. We didn't go in the lead through all our dominance in that first half. And at points, especially at half time, I had to kind of check myself saying, we are going away to a good side. But because of the way we played, I almost felt a little bit frustrated we weren't ahead.
Yeah, there was a couple of chances where players either kind of got in each other's way or snatched at something. And is it possible to suggest that Rig and Adingra, if anything, were trying too hard? They were full of energy. They were really desperate to make something happen. Maybe if they'd had a couple of more games and were a bit more... It sounds like I'm criticising them, and I don't mean to criticise them, because I thought they both made really good returns to the team. But had they had a few more games recently, they might not have snatched at a couple of incidents, or things might have become a bit more natural for them. But yeah, I think in general, towards half time, I was getting a feeling of something's coming here, something's going to happen. But then we didn't really create a gilt-edged chance. There was bits and pieces and a few half chances, and Alderete had a shot from outside of the box that the keeper was fairly comfortable with when dealing. But I had just got that feeling that something was going to fall, and it never quite did at that point.
Yeah. How would you sum up that first half, Jonny? Because like I said, I was slightly frustrated at half time, but also the performances. I thought Gachado was great alongside Xhaka in midfield, and I thought Adingra as well. I thought he looked sharp at times, and at least he didn't necessarily beat the man every time, but at least he was positive.
Yeah, I really was impressed with Adingra, actually. He was somebody he was probably the other one who caught my attention most when the team sheet came out, because I think everybody expected him to get his chance to start on the wing today, after obviously being in and out of the team, played more towards the start of the season and then has dropped out a little bit as the weeks have gone by. And I agree with Andrew. I think if he'd had, 3 or 4 games in a row under his belt, some of those chances or some of those moments where he's maybe beat somebody and just has to play the final pass or put a telling cross in, he probably makes 1 or 2 of those count if he's in rhythm, if he's in nick and he's match fit. But I think you could tell that, I think him and Rig, like Andrew said in particular, you could see that they were grafting, they were trying, and they both played well. But there were just a few moments where snatching at it, I think, is exactly how I'd describe it. Rig in particular, actually, I think snatched at a couple. There was one where Brobby's had the shot. It's come back to Rig on the edge of the box, like directly on the volley. He's tried to swivel and hit one from almost chest height, from the side of himself, and just got it all wrong. Whereas I think a more confident Chris Rig probably takes that down and then has a go, or maybe lays Adingra off. So yeah, there was lots of promise in general from Sunderland, and just a bit of that lack of cutting edge, a bit of that rust on a few of the players. But no, it was a good performance. I think Brighton couldn't have complained if they'd gone in at half-time a goal down. But equally, we can't massively complain at not going in a goal up, because for all of the hustle and bustle, like you have both said, there wasn't anything where you go, you've got to score that. There was no Isidore at the end at Anfield, where you go, that's the chance and you've got to score that if you want to be winning this game. So, yeah, I was pleased, I was content. And for me, the biggest positive was that defensively, we didn't miss a step. We've been so good defensively all season. And yes, okay, there was only Hume going into left back and it wasn't a massive amount of changes, but a defence isn't just the back four, it's the midfield as well, and it's the pressing up front. I think you mentioned the pressing, Chris, a little bit earlier on. They were brilliant, weren't they, in the first half? They were right in Brighton's faces at all times. And, the commentators who had a mixed day, the ones that I was listening to, it's fair to say, even they were, remarking on how good we were at getting up and at Brighton, even in their own half, and how they were struggling to deal with it. So a bit of a blueprint, I think, for how we can approach these kind of games going forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Broby chance where he took the ball off Chris Rigg. I think Chris Rigg was absolutely fuming at that. But anyway, I think before we get into the second half, that's a good chance for us to take a quick break. We'll be back very soon.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
This episode is brought to you by McAfee.
Finish your fantasy lineup?
No, but I'm joining this paid group chat with insider info.
Dude, seriously? Forward it to me. Security alert from McAfee. That group's as legit as that knockoff jersey you're wearing.
McAfee's scam detector is available in all McAfee plans for as little as $39.99 for your first year. Learn more at McAfee.com/online protection.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast, sponsored by LiveScore Bet. And we're just about to get into the second half, because the second half, I thought we were going to see a repeat of the Newcastle game last week, because we went at them from kickoff. And, we pinned them in early on, Andrew. We had a similar chance to actually what they had in the right at the beginning of the game, where there was an Alderete header from a few yards out. Good save from the keeper. But it does, it was really good pressure as well. Again, we're talking about that press. We really pinned them in. But it does seem to be a bit of a ploy that we've got recently, that we do try and start, especially the second half, that we've really kind of push on teams and try and get almost catch them cold.
Catch them cold is the exact phrase I would have used. Perhaps the club have looked into it and maybe realised that teams don't always start back up at 100%. We don't do anything on the pitch at half-time in terms of warming back up, but maybe there's a couple of stretches or little things they do in the changing room, because, as soon as they're back out, they are fully up to speed again. And it's caught teams out on a couple of occasions, and very nearly did so again against Brighton and Hove. As you say, that header for Alderete, it was almost a carbon copy for the opportunity Brighton had. That's something that strikes me a lot. We're often getting Alderete or Ballard in these goal-scoring chances. I mean, did Ballard have one in the first half where he ended up chasing down a short back pass? They obviously go up there for set pieces, but they're allowed to stay up there for the second ball or the second chance and what have you. And that is giving us a real threat, not just in the initial set piece, but also in open play. And then there were a few times after that as well where it looked like, yeah, we've got Brighton on the ropes here. It was a really good start to the second half.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually, because Alderete was still in there because it was a long throw. And he stayed up there and the ball was calf cleared and Lafayette crossed it was a brilliant cross back into the box from Lafayette and Alderete won the header. But yeah, Johnny, that first 10 minutes of that second half, again, because I was slightly worried that Brighton were going to sucker punch us. And then when we came out after that 10 minutes and we had that 10-minute spell at the beginning of the second half, I thought, right, now we've really got to take advantage at this point.
Yeah, it was one of those, wasn't it, where, like you say, we came out absolutely all guns blazing, or as close to all guns blazing as a Regis Fabrice team gets, maybe, at the start of that second half. And I had a slightly different reaction to it, where I was almost watching it thinking, I'm weirdly more worried that we've started well, because now if we drop and they come at us, with them being the home team. So again, I'm sure that's just the pessimistic Sunderland fan that was drilled into us for 20 odd years leading up to Regis coming in. But yeah, that was I felt a little bit similar going in at half time, actually, now that I think about it, where you almost do think, like, how many chances have we got left to create in this game? Like, I don't want us to run out of them too early, which is a ridiculous mindset to have, because that's not how football works or anything. But you do, don't you? You just sort of think like, oh, have we wasted the spell of pressure? But then the flip side of what I've just said is the fact that we went in at half time on top and then came out at the start of the second half on top. I think that speaks a lot to the mentality of this team, because how many Sunderland sides have we watched over the past sort of, well, okay, ignore the past 10 years, but say the 10 years in the Premier League before that, right? How many Sunderland teams did we watch that would, at most, put together 25, 30 minutes of decent football in a game, maximum? And it would be, every week you'd be sort of internally thinking, I hope those 15 minutes come at the right time and we're not already 3-0 down.
Sunderland in the Premier League last time round, 100% lose that game.
Without a shadow of a doubt, because there's no way we come out after half time playing that with that level of intensity again. It just wouldn't have happened. We'd have gone, oh, bloody hell, we've made it to half time, somehow 0-0. Oh, we better protect this. And we'd have dropped and dropped and dropped. And eventually we would have conceded. It was the way that every away game went. But this team, like I say, the fact that we did come out like we did in the second half, that says a lot about, Xhaka talks about it all the time, doesn't he? We believe we can win every game. We want to win every game. We work hard to try and win the games. We believe that we've got a right to go and play football against these teams. And yeah, obviously it didn't result in a goal this time, but we do that against more teams than we don't, and we'll come away with a goal more often than we don't. It actually really reminded us of the Villa game at home, where we went in at half time a bit deflated from Ronaldo's red card. But then start of the second half, even with 10 men, we came out, we were creating chances in a very similar way to the way that we did today. A lot of crosses, a lot of long throws, corner balls. So it's becoming a bit of a regular occurrence for this team, which I think bodes extremely well for the rest of the season.
It's interesting that you're comparing it to previous games, because the two games that I could see some comparisons with were Fulham away, but at a better level, and Crystal Palace away. I think we've already learned a lesson from that Fulham match, in that was a tight game, but then at the end, Fulham have just nudged themselves ahead and taken all 3 points. It was a better quality of match, but I'm talking in terms of the rhythm of it, and both teams having spells where they had a bit of possession. It was more like the Palace game for me, whereas we were solid, but were able to threaten as well, and like you have said, pushed high up in positions when the time was right. And because you've been able to point to the Aston Villa game, because we've been able to see similarities with the Crystal Palace performance, it just shows none of these are fluke results.
Yeah.
These are designed. Sunderland are designed to be able to do well in this type of match.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say about this lasted, well, kind of up to around the hour mark, actually, well, maybe a little bit after that, but there was a couple of subs that Regis Labris made around the hour mark. Mundell came on for a Dingra and Diarra came on for Rig, Andrew. Now, I don't know about you, but I thought it spoke volumes that Diarra was put out onto the right, and I'm just not quite, I mean, he just looked so rusty, didn't he?
Yeah, I was surprised. To be honest, I was surprised he came on at all, given the fact that he then, I mean, for all we know, he could already be making his travel arrangements to join up with his international squad. I didn't really see that we would get much benefit from him playing. I mean, he wasn't dreadful, and again, he worked hard, but he wasn't at the levels we know he can produce. You have to hope that now he is able to build up that sharpness in the next few weeks whilst he's playing for his national side. I think it just comes down to levels, though, because he might have been a little bit rusty, yes, and Adingra and Rig were ever so slightly rusty, but we're talking rusty within the context of still producing well and playing against a good team and being part of a side who are in the top half of the Premier League. I know I keep using that phrase a lot, but in the past, a Sunderland player being rusty would be a weak point and could be the reason why we lose the game. Players, when they're rusty now and are coming back into the team, aren't giving away goals or putting us into danger. It's just they're not quite at the even more impressive levels than we've come to expect of them. He's had a long time out. He was never going to come back in and be 100%. I didn't necessarily expect him to play, as I've said, but we'll see a different Diarra when he comes back, I'm sure.
Yep. Well, I mean, again, with about 20 minutes to go, Brian Broby was brought off, Johnny, and Isidore came on. And as this sub's been made, I'm seeing I'm writing down things like Brighton are there for the taking. Can we be more positive? Can we go and win the game? Now, after this point, and I'm not necessarily saying it's all on that substitution, it just seemed to turn around this point where Brighton just seemed to get on top of us. And dare I say it, I thought maybe in the last 20 minutes, I don't know whether this was Brighton stepping it up, but we just seemed to look leggy. Now, what do you think, Johnny? Do you think this was more Brighton stepping it up, or do you think we did tire?
It was definitely a little column A and a little column B, because you look at the changes that they made, and Andrew was just mentioning them being a top half Premier League team. They're bringing Kaoru Mitoma and James Milner off the bench. We're bringing a horrifically unfit central midfield player on to play right wing. Do you know what I mean? And Romain Mundell, who's, kicked a ball in 3 or 4 Premier League matches in his life? There's the levels, and I think there was definitely a regression from Sunderland when the substitutions were made, and we can get into the whys of that, but there was also, without a shadow of a doubt, there was an improvement from Brighton, particularly on the left-hand side when Mitoma came on. Not that he was, beating Mukiele for fun, but just to draw a comparison with last weekend, and not just because I want to bring up last weekend again, but you look at how easy of an afternoon Mukiele and Ronaldo had last Sunday, and it was because they knew that Gordon and Alanga, they were pace merchants. They weren't going to square you up and beat you, from a yard away in front of your face and do you with a bit of trickery and a shimmy. Mitoma, on the other hand, that is his game. That is everything he's brilliant at. So it did a few things. It gave them a bit more of an outlet. It gave them more chances to get the ball in the box. But also, Mukiele especially, it kept him penned way further back in his own half. Because so many times when we were getting forward and creating opportunities, one of the 2 fullbacks, as a bare minimum, would have been bombing on or at least progressing up the pitch. Hume a few times tucked into midfield. There were ways and means of going about it, but yeah, Brighton improved, which forced us back a bit. And on top of that, this is not a criticism of Isidore, because I just do not think today was the kind of game he should have been playing in. And it's a little bit of a lack of options. But you could tell when Robbie went off that we lost something. Because he wasn't amazing with the ball at his feet in front of goal. We mentioned when he maybe got in Riggs' way and stuff like that, but he got us up the pitch brilliantly. And he was winning a lot of first and second balls against their defence. And so to lose that out ball at the same time as getting pushed back a bit, and just as well, like so much upheaval. You think about our left-hand side, usually it's Ronaldo, Siddiqui is the left of the midfield three, and then Talby or Lafay on the left wing. All three of those positions had somebody brand new in, and then we made a sub where we took a Dingra off for Mundle. So it's no surprise that Brighton started getting a bit of joy down their right-hand side, our left. And it's also no surprise that we struggled to connect, to use a Labricism. There was one particular counter-attack. I'm not sure if you've got the minute noted down, but the one where Mundle tries to slide Isidore through and just gets it all wrong. It plays the pass about 4 yards behind him. If they're players who've played 15 games together already, I dare say that's a different outcome. So, yeah, I think you can make a lot of arguments as to why we dropped off after the substitutions came, but I do think that it's at least as much Brighton improving as it was us going backwards a bit.
Yeah, what did you make of that last 20 minutes, Andrew? Because, even though I thought we did look leggy in that last 20 minutes, I'm just looking at that, Brighton didn't have their first shot on target in the second half until the 82nd minute. So, we did have them at arm's length, even though we did look slightly tired because we've got that defensive structure and we know what we're doing. But there was a couple of, heart and mouth moments, especially that cutback from about 6 yards out where he put it over the bar. That could have made things very different.
It could have done. I agree. I agree with a lot of what Jonny said there. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, all of those issues and all of those reasons why we perhaps dropped off, and we're still competing and we're still doing okay in the top. I know I keep saying top half of the Premier League. I think we're, before other games being played, I think we're fifth now.
Top half of the top half, by the way.
Yeah. So, and I think the reason I keep repeating it is because I'm almost trying to convince myself that this is right, isn't it? I am talking to you about Sunderland, aren't I, lads?
We've lost as many games as Man City, I think.
Well, yeah. So we have to be grateful for the fact that even when there's a list of concerns and issues there and reasons where in the past you would have just walked away saying, "Oh, wait, Sunderland, never mind. You were never going to win, or you were never going to avoid defeat." Well, we did avoid defeat. We did get hemmed in a bit. I just thought we dug in really well. Other than that pullback, and it was a poor finish, I'd take your point on that one. It was all stuff that just Roofs was able to throw his cap on. Most of the time, the Brighton option was able to get a shot away, but it was weak. Or they didn't get the shot away at all because we were getting stuck in, we were putting our body on the line or what have you. I mean, Mukiele was phenomenal at right back in terms of stopping things getting past him. And we saw the different side to Sunderland. There were some moments where we were attacking with a bit of zip and things could have gone our way. But then when we needed to as I say, dig in, I thought we were really impressive. Again, this is another thing I often say. I think as a Sunderland fan, you're nervous in those minutes. But if you're a Brighton fan, I don't think you could walk away from there saying, we had Sunderland rocking. Sunderland weren't like being stretched all over. They worked together brilliantly as a unit in that last 15 minutes for me.
So can I just say, by the way, I want to just make a point on Roofs, because I thought about while you were speaking there, and you said a lot of the things he could have chucked his cap on, which is right. But let's just give him his flowers for a second as well, because it'll go under the radar a bit because of how poor the quality of the chances were in the game. But there was moments, there was one in particular, I can't remember whether it was first or second half. Brighton had a free kick. It goes way towards the back post, and Roofs is sprinting off his line, goes up, gets the ball with one hand, captures it, and then I think he immediately then launches it down the other end of the pitch with a throw, and Adingra gets away, so it must have been first half, I think. But there was that was the one that stood out massively. But Roofs, again, coming and claiming things, command of his area was phenomenal.
And that was a really good moment from him. That was in the first half. It was brilliant. And I will just say this. When I've said he could throw his cap on some of them, that sounds as if I'm belittling him. I don't mean to. A lot of the time,
absolutely.
A lot of the times, he makes a save look routine because his footwork was right and his positioning was right, and he knows what the striker is going to try to do. So there's no need for him to then suddenly fly across his goal or what have you. He's such a steady, no frills goalkeeper. He makes it look easy. Unreal to watch.
Yeah, dare I say it, good comparison to Thomas Sorensen. I think he was very much in the school of no frill and just a good keeper. But I think pretty much the last major incident of the game was Tommy Watson coming on the pitch as substitute. But before we get Jonny and Andrew's kind of last thoughts on the draw, we'll go to the socials because we asked everyone for their 3-word reviews on the game. So we'll go through as many of those as we possibly can. We've got Gavin Evans, who says point well gained. Roca Rodeo says need take chances. Shoehorned the 3-word review into that. Cortez says need to score. Harry said we'll take that. Wallex Walborn says Roofs is massive. Roca Rodeo gives us a second one. He says point on road. SH29 said ticking points over. Billy says AFCON didn't matter. Nice one. I like that one. Jamie said, please play Mayenda. I think we might be talking about that over maybe the coming weeks. That'll be an interesting one. Robbie Thompson says, good away point. Aaron Charlton says, loads of missed chances, in brackets both sides. 5 words, Aaron. 3-word review. Trevor Richardson, good battling performance. Up the Sunland says, free Eliza Mayenda. Another one for Mayenda. Interesting. Briano says, we edged it. Steve Richards says, good point away. Mr. Scum Whisperer says, hard to kill. The Bangkok Black Cat says, sign attacking players. That might be
few. I'm pleased that's all they say.
It might be there's more. It might be an interesting topic for January, that one, sign attacking players. Birchie says, good away point. Wrote for Luck says, broby. I'm sure there's a song in there somewhere. Ian Blacklock says, solid away performance. Leighton says, take the point. D says, great squad depth. Pete says, point despite AFCON. It is interesting. Everybody thought we were going to fall apart during AFCON. Michael Pickering says, don't fear AFCON. Never fear the AFCON. It's a good tournament. Josh says, Alderete is majestic. Diane... I don't know what the lads are getting carried away there. Diane says, we're a side. Okay. Rob Usher says, clean sheet away. Ollie James says, Mayenda is needed. I think that's going to be a big talking point. Daz G says, hard to beat. And we've got Owen Thomas, clean sheet again. Mickey will take that. So I think everybody's kind of in agreement. But we'll come to you, Jonny. Your final thoughts, because I suppose the obvious question is, is it point gained, 2 points lost? How are we looking at this one?
Definite point gained for me, without a shadow of a doubt. Listen, we've been on a brilliant run this season. We're currently 5th as we sit recording this right now. But all that being said, we're still, at the end of the day, we are still a promoted team. This is our first season back in the Premier League in a long, long time. Even teams who've been succeeding in the Premier League for as long as Brighton currently have, or, teams like that, they're not turning the noses up at clean sheets and points away from home. So there's no way in hell we should be doing the same. You know, we need to be looking at games like this. As we discussed, we should be thinking we can win. We should be going for a win. We should be trying to score goals. But if you'd offered me a clean sheet and a point before the game kicked off today, I'd have said thank you very much, and I'd have turned my telly off because there'd be no need to keep watching. It's a good result. And actually, you know, one of the lads put into our WhatsApp group earlier, just put a screenshot of our last, whatever it was, 8 games or so. Basically, since Chelsea away, we've only won 3 games. So Chelsea away we won, and since then we've won another 2, being the Mags and Bournemouth. But how good does that run feel? Because we're not losing games, we're picking up points. Everton at home, Arsenal at home. You know, games like that where, okay, yeah, you can, especially Everton, you can maybe say, oh, maybe we should have won, and on paper doesn't matter, don't get beat. As long as you're not getting beat, your points tally's going up, and if your points tally's going up, I'm a happy man.
Well, I'd even argue the Man City game, which we got on paper, we got hammered in, was a fantastic performance, especially for the first half an hour or so. But Andrew, how would you sum the goalless draw at Brighton up?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the side of respect the away point. I think that's something you should always see as a good base to go from. I know what Johnny means in terms of turn the TV off. I can't stop watching this side at the moment. Even if I knew what the score was going to be, I'm loving watching them. And is this the most, you know, when you say players get the club, I don't quite know what that means, but I think this squad has got the most players who get it. They're just so enjoyable to watch. They're really graft hard. Yeah, a point away from home will do for me. I know, Chris, you really like when people come in with feedback and the 3-word reviews because you like to get an idea of what other people are thinking. The vast majority of people there are all positive, aren't they? You know, I don't know, would you say about, I don't know, roughly 75% of people there were like, oh, decent point, I'll take that. We're all in a good place. We all know what the club are doing at the moment and like what we're seeing. This is just another move towards that. I realise you said me quick thoughts, Chris, so I do apologise. I'll quickly wrap this up. Just 2 more points I'd like to make. Trey Hume at left back, fantastic.
Brilliant.
I said previously I wasn't sure and I was expecting Serkin to come in. I've always loved Trey Hume. I think he's a fantastic player. But his levels at left back today were as good as his levels are on the right-hand side. He won a late tackle towards the end where he manages to get the ball out on the touchline and you can tell he's buzzing. Fantastic. Great effort from him. Great effort from a lot of the players, to be fair, but Hume in particular. And also, a couple of days before Christmas, great effort from the lads and lasses that went down there. What a shocking journey that is. Middle of December when you're short on cash. Fair play. And I'm chuffed to bits for the fans as well as the players that we've come away with an encouraging point.
Yeah, and we do have to remember, if we want a quick half an hour reaction pod after the game, to not ask Johnny and Andrew onto the podcast. But just very, very quickly, gentlemen, your man of the match today. I'll start with you, Johnny.
I find it tough to give a man of the match when the defensive unit was so good. I'm going to go Alderete because he was just my first instinct. I thought the way that Andrew mentioned players enjoying grafting and enjoying defending. The way Alderete goes into challenges, that's, for me, that's everything I want to see in a player. That's what I'd want to be doing if I was on the pitch for Sunderland. So yeah, he was brilliant and almost got his goal as well to cap off a great display.
Yeah. Andrew, who was your man of the match?
I'll go Ballard because I think that whole unit at the back, from goalkeeper to back four, I think they're all fantastic. Ballard, I think, is the only one we haven't name checked in this recording, and I think he deserves a shout. He was cracking as always.
Yeah, well, you're in agreement with all of our followers on X because we put it out there to ask man of the match. We gave them options of Ballard, Broby, Michele and Alderete. Ballard got 50% of the votes, and this is around an hour-ish after the full-time whistle. Broby, 8% of the votes. Michaela, 22% of the votes, and Alderete, 19% of the vote. But it does show that three of those four were at the back, which I think says everything kind of about our performance today, especially that last 20 minutes. But I think that's long enough for our initial reaction today after a goalless draw at Brighton. I said we'd squeeze as much as possible out of it, and we certainly have. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Jonny. It's always a pleasure, mate.
Yeah, always a pleasure, never a chore. I could have gone for 2 hours on that.
I know. We can talk all night about a goalless draw, can't we, Andrew? Thanks very much, Andrew. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. I thought I was being brief, but yeah, I've just seen the time creeping up there. Thanks very much, everyone. Good fun as always.
Yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, we'll have I'm going to say we'll have a more in-depth look at the game in the morning with the lads on our Sunday supplement. Maybe not. Maybe we'll go through all of this again. But of course, we'll have loads of reaction on the Local Report website as well. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day. Yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.